money. Money makes the world go around, the world go around, the world go around. Money makes the world go around, it makes the world go round. A mark, a yen, a buck or a pound, a mark, a yen, a buck or a pound is all that makes the world go around. That clinking, clanking sound can make the world go round. Money, 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 money. If you happen to be rich and you feel like a nice entertainment, you can pay for a gay escapade. If you happen to be rich and alone and you need a companion, you can ring ting-a-ling for some mate. If you happen to be rich and you find you are left by your lover and you moan and you groan quite a lot, you can take it on the chin, call a cab and begin to recover on your 14-carat yacht. What? Money makes the world go round, the world go round, the world go round. Money makes us go round, of that we both are sure on being poor. Money, 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 money.
Hello everyone, welcome to our second discussion of this digital edition of 180 Degrees Laboratory for Innovative Art, Sofia. I'm extremely happy that today we have these wonderful people with us to discuss this week's topic, funding projects as a freelance artist, probably also without an institution, which is a big challenge for all of us. And I'm really excited together with Florence today that we can talk to Kristina Veit, choreographer and dancer from Germany, Ashleigh Gordon, musician and co-founder of Castle of Our Skins from Boston, USA, Valentina Buitrago from Colombia, but living in Germany and working for the Bauhaus Dessau, and Milen Apostolov, composer and curator from Bulgaria. So, hello everyone. So, we have this week this really, really complicated topic, but maybe first I would like to start with just a simple question, and this is, can you tell us who you are and what do you do?
My name is Ashleigh Gordon. I live in the States. I'm in Boston. I'm a violist and educator as well as an administrator. I ran, as you say, co-founded Castle of Our Skins, which is a concert and educational series that promotes the music of Black composers from the African diaspora. The organization is a nonprofit. It started as an independent project and is now a nonprofit organization.
So I'm Kristina. I'm living now in Frankfurt since 11 years now, and I started as a freelancer. I'm coming from dance, that's the main background. Now I'm doing physical performances, and I've co-founded with two other people a beneficial association that is called ID Frankfurt, Performance and Dance and Performing Arts. And it grew during the years. By now we have a rehearsal center, and the main purpose of that association was to support a structure that is there for freelance arts, and especially for artists also that don't necessarily have a theater structure in the background or any other solid structure that supports them.
Okay, so my name is Milen. I'm from Bulgaria. I'm a composer and conductor, mainly freelancing. Also co-founder of Independent Chamber Orchestra in Bulgaria, in Sofia. And also I'm working in a lot of different fields of art freely without any NGO or any institutions behind me. So, but yeah, in Bulgaria, things are pretty abstract. So I'm truly independent in some way.
Well, I'm Valentina Buitrago. I'm what you would define in Germany as cultural manager, but I have a background in design and design research. And the past 3 years, I was working as an employee for the Stiftung Bauhaus Dessau. But this year is the first year that I'm working for them also as a cultural manager, as a freelancer. So let's say I have been living all these two perspectives for the past 4 years. and I'm also currently working in possible projects that includes foundings, like public foundings in Germany.
Thank you very much. Could you maybe tell us a bit about how you realize your projects, or what are the options you have to get funded or to get money to realize what you do?
Well, if I could start also, like I can maybe describe like broadly these two perspectives. One is as an institution. For the Bauhaus Dessau Foundation, let's say it's a public institution, and therefore it's also funded by public monies. But the Bauhaus has fixed projects, meaning they have like a basic group of projects that they founded every year. But if they come up with a new idea, they have to go and get funding from another institution. And normally it's cultural institutions. Yeah, Bauhaus Dessau Foundation belongs, let's put it that way, belongs to the Minister of Culture of Saxony-Anhalt, I think is in English. And therefore, like, you always have to go through this paths of getting fundings from the same region, or from, let's say, banks that are also interested in founding big cultural projects. But you always are depending on, let's say, checking what is around available for bigger projects, like projects with a budget of 100, 250,000 euros. For example, last year we had different big projects that included, like, I think in total more than 1 million euros. But this takes a preparation of about 4 years now for these big projects. And as a freelancer, of course, I try to see what kind of projects and what kind of ideas I can use for certain fundings. Because Germany, luckily in Germany, you have, like, for example, in my case, I'm Colombian, so in Colombia it's not so structured and you don't have so much funding, but you have these platforms that you can always check online as well about what kind of fundings can you get for certain ideas. So for every idea there is a purpose and there is a funding, but of course it's a process of knowing how you administrate that, because they're expecting you to do it. So kind of a general idea on that.
Yeah, I can piggyback off of that. When I first started Kesselver Skins with Anthony Green, who is also in Berlin / the Netherlands, it was crowdsource funded through individuals, raising funds on various platforms, Indiegogo, for instance, or Kickstarter. And then, as we are the only organization project in Boston, which is a very rich artistic city, focusing on the music of Black composers, we were quickly realized as being unique. And so people became very attracted to the organization and wanted to contribute. Individual donors wanted to contribute, and then eventually individual foundations regionally, as well as locally specific to Boston, and then eventually nationally. As we became a nonprofit, that sort of solidified a little bit more of our credentials for especially foundations to want to contribute larger gifts. And then certainly in the States, at least, with a lot of racial unrest right now, there's even greater attention. And without having to do much more than just exist, we've significantly increased our individual contributions and also foundation grants.
In Frankfurt, we have the situation that individually, me as an artist and as a realizer of their own production in the free scene, sometimes with a house and without a house, but also for the association, there is a Ministry of Culture from the city where you can apply for singular projects that are happening, or for a longer term-based, like, for example, the association would be one of those. Yeah, they call it a funding for 2 or for 4 years. It's more institutionalized. And then there is a possibility to also to apply a little bit broader, which would be the region, the Minister of Culture there. And then there's different structures on a national base, where of course always, like, the bigger you get, the applications are getting more complicated. They have more demands. You need more, like a third party that also already is supporting your project. It gets, the range gets wider. And of course there exists as well, like Valentina, you said, there's also like funds of banks and also here, and you need to very specifically look into and check if your project or whatever you want to realize is according to their set of rules and what they are supporting with. So on some you can be lucky, on others not. You need to research a lot for that.
No, the situation with me is more or less the same, with a couple of differences, of course. Now, as we all know, the situation is really complicated in terms of art and everything. And there are a lot of funding, which is strange because now, at least in Bulgaria, there are much more fundings for the independent sector than before, just because of this pandemic, which is really strange, but great for independent artists. So now I could say that some of my projects are relying on funding from the Ministry of Culture. Also, there are some types of funding from the Sofia region specifically, but everything now is a little bit strange because there are some guidelines and there are some open projects, but still nobody knows when they will be realized. So it's like, okay, we're gonna fund your project, but we cannot tell you, can you realize it, because of all the restrictions. In general, in Bulgaria, funding from the country is a little bit, I don't know, sometimes not exactly enough to realize your project. So that's why you have to look elsewhere, you know, in terms of sponsors and that kind of stuff. But people here are a little bit reserved when they have to give money in the, invest money in the field of art and culture. That's why actually I'm participating in one project right now. It's a theatrical project. I'm playing there on the piano, and we're approaching this like, like investors. We're taking a loan and we're investing, some PA equipment, some mics and that kind of stuff. And we're traveling all around Bulgaria, hoping for, just to get money from tickets and that kind of stuff. We are not relying on any kind of funding at all. And I could say, actually, although it's picking up slowly, that it's a way to be truly independent. Only to rely on your audience and what they're willing to give you. Because we have one situation that we weren't able to sell any tickets, so we just make a donation box. And in the end of the day, we were, kind of okay in terms of the money calculations afterwards.
Yeah, this is true what you, Milen, say. I'm gonna also talk now from the side of 180 Degrees. We are creating this festival since 7 years, and it's quite difficult because the concept and the art of it is very abstract for the scene there. And it's true that the pandemic had to come, that they actually separate the grants, because until now we were all in one box, like dance, music, pop music, everything was in one grant. And then kind of the institutions, or like the organization I meant to say, were kind of scared even to partnership with each other, because everybody wants to keep his money. The other problem that I see is also with we are depending on institutional funding, because we cannot put tickets, because, as I said, the art is very abstract and we want to make it reachable for everybody. So we put also donation box, as you did, Milen, in your project. And yeah, it's coming something, but it's definitely not enough. So we tried many times to reach some sponsors, but there comes the problem, because sponsors, of course, they're corporations, and they think how many people we can reach with our product if it will be advertised in some way there. We cannot afford to put in our art, like, I don't know, a big sign of Lidl or Kaufland or some brand, because it will ruin completely the concept. And then, because of these problematics, they are also not very open to support something like this, and they would prefer to support, I don't know, a concert of Jennifer Lopez, which will collect 100,000 people, and it will have completely different reaction of this. But on the same hand, I don't know when it will be the next time when we can have 100,000 people at the same place. So maybe the things would change now. So I would like to ask you the next question, which is, what are the steps you take in order to get the funding? And maybe could you estimate what percentage of your work goes into this? Like, how much time of your personal time you invest in to prepare this?
I mean, in the past years, I would say, I mean, the steps are like, we already kind of said them, like to look up all those different possibilities for funding, the ministries, the foundations, to check what are their expectations for projects, and to find those where there is a possibility that the idea of the project would suit them and would fit. And then it is to write applications, and very often it's not just one application, but it is 2 or 3, according also to the specificities of the, you know what I mean, of the different funders or institutions. So it's a lot of writing, and also making budgets, and then, of course, beforehand, for at least in our case, in the city and also the region, they already want to know, before you make an application, where do you think to realize your project, which theater, which gallery, which museum, which alternative space. And in the ideal case, to have already a confirmation of that. So there's a lot of meetings beforehand also, to meet with the responsible people of those places, to clear if the interests are matching. And yeah, and then you can send the stuff in. And I think until that point, it is, I would say, 50% of then, once they granted the project, they say, okay, you get some money. The actual working rehearsal time and realizing the project is about the same amount then for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of that rings true for me as well in the States. We have a little bit of a unique situation in the sense that a lot of our programs, which are both educational and concerts, are presented. So in most seasons, there is about one self-produced project, which we have to solely raise funds for. So the same, the grant applications, the ideation, writing for multiple rounds, if there's several rounds for the grants, speaking with program officers, going to info sessions and keeping track of deadlines and dates. But the rest of our season largely is presented, meaning a gallery, a museum, a festival, another organization will hire us. And various negotiations about what kind of programming, when it would work, what the travel costs are, and they would actually foot the bill, which has been a blessing to be able to have that kind of opportunity. and have a collaborative working situation about what kind of programming we were able to offer, who are the musicians, who are the artists to be involved, and not beyond the sort of negotiations have to worry about the funding. That said, the role that I play in the organization is artistic director and executive director, and to balance both of those, among other things, but to balance both of those directorial positions is quite a challenge. I feel like I spend a majority amount of my time as artistic director planning and negotiating projects, meeting new potential presenters, and trying to do networking. Also as an administrator, managing my team with various meetings, my board, etc. And then the fiduciary responsibility, the fundraising responsibility of an executive director is a little bit of an afterthought for me. But when there are grant applications, when there are appeal letters at the end of the year to solicit donations, then I remember I have to raise funds. But for the majority of our work, at least the work that I have with Castle of Erskines, it's presented, which takes care of a lot of the fundraising.
Adding to what Ashleigh was saying, for example, in the foundation, if we are interested, like let's say we have a program, and normally this program, we always tried in every single project we have to invite projects as well, like for example Ashleigh's project, and that's how they get the funding. So normally it's not if you go to a foundation or you go to a cultural institution in Germany, in my experience, in my very personal experience, sometimes you can come with a project already on your own that is already fits, like a proposal of a theatrical piece, a performance, something, and then we will see, oh yes, this fits very good for this program. We would like to hire you for that. So sometimes it's more that you have already your idea very clear, and then you can reach this kind of institutions with already a fixed project. Because as a foundation, we are not allowed, for example, to found stuff because we are already founded. Yeah, so we are not allowed to found things, but we are able to pay for already projects. They're gonna have a performance, but sometimes it's this ability, and we have had this experience with many artists, freelancers, freelance projects, that they are just matching in this right time, but they reach us. Somehow you have to stay active and go beyond that, and not only the like the openings what you find online, but reaching maybe these institutions where your project could be presented in a way. And as a freelancer, for example, I was applying last weekend to a funding also for a business project, and this week this business project is gonna translate into an artistic project because we are gonna apply for another funding, and we are just trying to see how this big idea we can get it funded through different meanings. And this is the activity, something that as Kristina was also saying, it never stops, and you have to, because you have to meet their requirements. So somehow you always have to redesign your proposal, your text, everything. If it's an academic proposal or is a business proposal, every language is different. And for example, in culture in Germany, you always have to apply in German. But if it's for a business idea, you can apply in English. So it's always, like having this into account and taking this into account before you always, like get prepared to even make a proposal. So it takes, I would say, for me, this 70% of the time, and the 30% is maybe ideation, and then the rest is like really trying to make it happen.
So Valentina, maybe a question just to understand you clear, or if I got you right, would you say from the foundational or from the foundation point of view, the freelance artists that apply do not only apply to open calls and so on, but really on self-initiative? Is this also a way to go in order to approach foundations, not for producing, but for showing already produced works?
Yeah, exactly. So because, for example, we have as I said before, many different projects, many different programs, and I'm also the coordinator of the Bauhaus residency, and that we really do open calls and we invite directly artists, but this is only for contemporary art. But we have around 20 projects per year that we invite, or sometimes, like we are doing research about design education, and somehow some people contact us through email, because all the information is online. So sometimes they contact us directly and saying, hey, look, I have this project, we do it like this. And if we are interested, of the people who are doing the research for, let's say, a program are interested, they're always going to get to you. And like, for example, last year we had that was for one specific festival. It was like festival School Fundamental was called, and we invited people from all over the world who had this alternative educational projects around design. But they also reached us, like not only from our research, it comes a lot, of course, from personal research, but also because they reach us, like they say, look, I have this project and maybe someone is interested, like you always have to try. I think it's also a good chance to get yourself, like you get, to try to reach out the people who can't really pay for this kind of projects, say.
Actually, this question is really interesting. Usually when the project is initiated by me, I'm more into the ideological part of the project. With my colleagues, we are always thinking about the meanings and that kind of stuff, and all those paperworks and administration stuff. Actually, we are putting a lot of time into finding the right person for doing that, because I think that when you start a project, you need to find a perfect person who will administrate everything, who will write your projects, because when you have a program, there are specific points you should look for, and those people who are doing all those administration stuff, they will transform your perfect idea into something that will work for the program. If you are leaning more to country fundings from, for example, from the Ministry of Culture or that kind of stuff. So actually, although it may sound funny, I've tried only once to write a project, and with all those terms, conditions, etc., and I felt horrible, because that was something so far from me. After all, I have a master's degree in conducting and composing, and is something really strange for me. Like, it looks like something from outer space. But I know that it's really important, so that's why the art team that is which is around me is in constant search for the perfect professionalist who will transform our ideas into something that will work. Because I know that maybe at some point this is more important than the whole idea, because otherwise you're only left with your perfect ideas and your dreams, but nothing in the real world. So when I try to do that by myself, maybe 70 or 90% goes to just working out the papers. But when I find someone to do that for me, I could say, of course, you still have to coordinate some stuff, but it's lesser work, so it's around 10%, and I'm more free to do the art part of the project.
Yeah, actually, it's true what you're saying. I was just trying to think of the last moment actually that I played my instrument bassoon in the past months. Because entering the independent scene and like organizing projects, like you have to learn by doing just exactly how to write this project. And also it's like every organization or every funding wants different things, wants to hear different things. And you have to know how exactly to write this. And of course, it's a lot of investment also to make a PR plan or like all these kind of things they need. And also, like, I think it's amazing that the Bauhaus is making these researches and try to keep this all alive, what was happening also 100 years ago. But I think it's talking as a musician, as an individual artist, it's difficult to get funding, at least in Germany, maybe also in Bulgaria, if you don't have the name. Like you need a name, a big name or some big name of institution. Like in the case, if I go to Bauhaus and then we apply together, of course, it's the chance to get the money, it's bigger. But if me as Alexandar Hadjiev, if I go and I say, hey, I have this really cool project and I want to realize it. And of course, they would say no, because it doesn't fit to their criteria, which usually now have to have something to do with the social problems of the society, which is great. But on the other hand, there it's happening so many other problems. So yeah, it's I have to say that it invests also, like, probably in my point of view, like 80% is just bureaucratic work, and the other 20% is actually the creative work, which it's a bit sad.
So as I understood, like Milen, you are always trying to find a professional to do this whole organizational stuff, and Ashleigh, you are kind of the professional of Castle of Our Skins, dealing with all of these questions. Kristina, I think I understood that you do it by yourself or with the colleagues you're working with. And Valentina, you too, when you're working freelance, you do it with the colleagues. So my question would be for those who have experiences with hiring somebody to do it. It's maybe a bit of a simple question, but like, how do you afford it before you even get the funding? How do you hire someone to outsource it, or to the other ones also, like as Alex began, how do you, is it just a learning by doing thing, or like how do you learn how to do it? Did you do courses? Did you do extra education?
I'll be quick, but in Boston, as well as in school, for me, when I came to Boston to do my master's, my first master's at New England Conservatory, and they had a career service center, which I took full advantage of, and I was a work-study student, sort of making whatever minimum wage while in between classes, and learned a great deal there through a lot of the workshops, presentations, paperwork, resource books on handling sort of the administrative side to realize a creative project. In Boston, I shared it's a really rich artistic city that has a lot of history as it relates to arts and culture, as well as foundations that do support specifically arts and culture, a whole division in the city that's related to arts and culture. All of those institutions, foundations, city government provide workshops quite regularly that are often free for professional development as it relates to many aspects of artistry, whether it's fundraising, grant writing, whether it's project proposals, whether it's understanding search engine optimization for your website and branding and marketing, all sorts of things. It's actually a little overwhelming how much information is here, as well as how much mentorship is here. So there's no shortage of information, as well as just research to be able to look online and find. There's a number of platforms, also free or with small service fees to be able to find information. That said, as a practicing violist, as a freelance violist, I've played with a number of ensembles in Boston, and like any freelancer, you try to be very personable. You try to be likable so that you get hired again, and through that you learn of many. You develop many relationships. So it was easy enough for me to be able to turn to my orchestra personnel manager and ask questions, or to take a look at the school where I work and speak with their development director, because we had built a relationship. One huge aspect about fundraising with all of these is that it is very, very relationship building. So it's not just a brick and mortar foundation, but it's the program officer person who you need to develop a relationship with. Or when speaking with someone, it isn't as if someone sort of materializes, but your relationships over time will help guide you to a person or a team, or even a volunteer organization, a class that's being taught at a school who is trying to put interns into an arts administrative organization, and you happen to be that organization. It's all relationship building, which obviously takes time. But there was definitely a lot of information as I was first starting out, and information that I sought after to help with that. It is, in terms of grant writing, it is something that you just have to start doing. And there are, for 10 applications, you maybe get 1 or 2, but the idea of learning, of challenging, of growing is definitely something that is very attractive to me. So I welcomed that challenge. And then certainly through, again, the things that I have learned in the conversations, realizing that it's not just this ambiguous thing that you're applying to, but it's a people are reading this and understanding sort of what the psychology is behind a question. So if they ask you to describe your project, or to describe the mission, describe the community that you're serving, understanding who the they is, so the particular foundation or organization, who is leading it, who is on the board, what other projects have they researched, what are their visions and their core values, as though it's a person. So in conversation with this person, how would you respond to that question as the organization? And I've learned that, as Valentina was saying, that there's different language that you need for each application, because again, it's a different human, it's a different person that you're applying to. We have also worked with largely volunteers who have also wanted to write grants, whether they're a volunteer, whether it's an intern, or whether it's someone who is an advisor to us who has grant writing experience. And also working with, as Alex had mentioned, working with another institution to collaborate on a project, whether it's a large institution that's presenting us, or a collaborative arts organization, and we will work on the application together.
I'm having like 1,000 thoughts on that topic going at the same time through my head, because I find it's quite complex. I think to the question like how I got into that, at least I have never heard of courses about that. I think it's a great idea. I know that if you are in a study program, and then there is the possibility to take courses in management, in application writing, and this kind of stuff. For me, I was in a situation, I already was working in theaters and traveling around working with companies, and then I came to Frankfurt, and that was kind of the first time that I was fully autonomous, fully independent in that sense, and I had to like create, to see what will I be doing, and also create those projects. So, but it was a very inspiring time. It was the same time that we founded this association, and I was with 2 more people, and kind of we were so uplifted, and then we just worked ourselves through all this, and it really felt like Milen said, like a completely different world, and it's an alien-like being. to sit down and read all this and getting into paragraphs and very far away from my until then known way of working. And I think hearing you, Ashleigh, I have to realize that I've never been that inspired in writing and doing that application. But I think it's a really, really important value to have that. I have to say, here in the situation it's quite tight in deadlines. So over the past years, I tried a couple of times to find a project manager, to find someone that helps writing, that helps, from this other point of view to support or to give a structure to a production. And in this area where I am, it is not an easy thing. Like, it is either there is so few that do that well. So from all the freelance artists, they are already taken and been busy with, or it really takes too long, and then the next deadline is coming. So very often it ended up to be, okay, now we have to get it out, so we need to write it ourselves, or I need to write it. And I think it makes a big difference if you have someone. Also, for me at least, I'm now at a phase where I said I take a break. It's 10, 11 years, in this deadline after deadline after deadline. And because like you said, Alex, it's not just the time for application that you need to invest and the communication with theaters and what we already named, but it's also then especially if you're in an independent or alternative space that doesn't have a structure, and then it's all the setup so that you can start working there, that you can have your people and artists come in to create all these conditions, and then also the post-production, to all the calculations, the budget, all the communication with the city, with the funders again, if what you handed in is right. So it's a huge amount of time that adds up, and like in my case now, the artistic process and also the resonance of the artistic process is so fast gone, because you're immediately glued to the desk again. That I thought, okay, I need a break, and I think it can be very tiring. So if there's someone around that can support that process, I think it's gold.
Well, I think that since we all know how hard it is to write and coordinate, especially big projects, that will lead to some kind of more people are studying and getting into the field of cultural management, probably. At least in Bulgaria, there are a lot of people who are studying now that kind of I think a lot of my colleagues actually who are theatrical directors, now they are studying art management, just because they need to know how to write their projects and how to coordinate everything. But I think that a part of the question was, how do I afford that kind of person? First of all, when we try to make something, maybe an installation, maybe a performance, we form a team and we try to find that person already to incorporate him or her into the team. And in terms of general how much money can we give him, we usually work in a part of the budget. It really depends. If they fund our budget, that person will take that part of the budget, because he's done all those complicated stuff. And actually, at that point, we find a couple of people who are doing that. And since in Bulgaria, the main way to fund anything is through Ministry of Culture or some institution like that, although you won't receive enough money, but still you receive something. There are a lot of people who are just writing projects. They know all those strange mechanisms of how the words are working for you and how to write a sentence that will work for the people who will judge your project. And that's why I think that more and more people will become available, at least in Bulgaria, just writing projects. But I think that this is something much more complicated, of course. And the only way until now, the only way that will work for me is to find someone who is as involved in this field as me, but professionally he is more into the administrative part. So probably he has an interest into music, but he has a master in I don't know, probably management or something like that. And that's the perfect combination for me. Of course, there are a lot of resources, and I think that some of the programs in Bulgaria had seminars. If you win a project, you have a seminar for 2 days, just to explain. Other professionals are explaining to you how you should realize your project, how you should market it, how you should find, I don't know, all the necessary stuff that you should find in order to realize it as the best way possible. So there are some kind of seminars here in Bulgaria for that. I have never been to any of them because I'm scared of that kind of work, as I told you. But I know a lot of people who are really into that kind of that kind of stuff now, because they've attended so many of these seminars, and now they're almost as good as the people who are doing that only as a main job. But in general, the best way for me is to find a colleague of yours who will do only that. And that way, I think all those different fields won't suffer. The creative part will be 100% creative. The administration part will be 100% administrative, because as I told you, my bad experience was at one point I was scenographer. I was, I was doing stage stuff. I was a conductor, composer. I also organized all the marketing, and in the end, I was so exhausted during the concert that I never felt anything more horrible than this. I was like, what I'm doing here? Am I on the stage at the moment, or I'm just dreaming? It was really bad, and that was the point. I told myself that everyone should be specifically working in a specific field, doing a specific job, and that way maybe the final product will be the best. Of course, I admire you all who are doing all those kind of stuff. Maybe the problem is with my brain and its capacity, but for me it is impossible. I cannot imagine do all those kind of stuff and at the same time be creative.
Picking up what Milen was saying, I understand, like, I have worked with many artists who are, because one thing is that you have an idea, and the other thing is that you are able to put it into paper or to give it a shape, to be able to communicate your idea. Because one thing is that your idea is powerful, but how you communicate it, how the people reach it, the people, it's the key. So I understand what you're saying, and I think that is a huge challenge for me as a culture manager. Like, I'm on the other side, also to being able to translate all of this. Sometimes it's also what Ashleigh was saying, a matter of networking, because of course when you are in a a stage, like we are not institutions, you know, like in my case, of course, I work for one, but like I also do my own projects, and I'm not an institution. So then you have to always get back to your friends or this people who might support you, who might have those skills that can, exactly like Milen was saying, build a team that have all the same interests, but and all working for the same goal. But until you don't have, or you don't reach that goal, you're not able to offer that, or not able to afford it, like money, you know, like with that you can able to pay for that. I think this is something that you really have to involve a team, that you are able to say, okay, if we get this, we all get it, and we are all going to participate. And of course, at the moment where you're already planning, even before getting the scholarship or whatever you're applying for, the grant, you of course have to say very clear how much, I mean, what is your work, which are your tasks, and how much would you be getting per hour or something. Even here in Germany, when you're applying for a big grant, even if it's 20,000 euros, they already asking you for a business plan, or with a like where you're actually explaining them how you're giving this money, and how are you paying yourself, and how much do you cost, and how much are you going to cost. You know, like you are able, or you have to be able to oversee all of this, you know, and to be able to have an overview from the beginning, even before starting, before getting €1. So this is very important to clarify, to have it like very clear since the beginning. But I think also it's through friends. I also can't say anything else, because it's through friends that I have been doing all of it. So my freelancer work, let's say privately.
Can I tack on one thing to what Valentina had said? I think this sounds very daunting, and when paired with time management is manageable. So I think, Valentina, you had said that for the Bauhaus, a project may be realized in 2025, and you start fundraising now. Something along these lines, which is very true. So it isn't as if if it's a last minute scramble, if it's months prior and you're fundraising, of course, artistic and marketing and general operations, production, funding is incredibly overwhelming. But having strategies, having long-term visions, and having time makes the administrative, the artistic, the fiduciary responsibilities manageable. Certainly it can be better managed with a team, but it's not impossible as an individual if there's time management.
Artist / project manager / scenograph / everything. Time, this is true. It is definitely manageable if you plan in advance. In some cases, you cannot plan in advance. Some cases, it's some fundings, like in Bulgaria, like it's really like the application for next year starts in October and finish in December, and you hear about if you're getting funding in February and your project is already in March or April, so you're kind of suffering not knowing, can I manage this or not? So it's a bit, I think, about the structures of the institution themselves, or the grants themselves. Talking about structures, my next question will point to the criteria of each foundation or each grant that you applied. Have you needed to adjust to these criteria in a not artistical way, or it completely fitted you, or you're searching for your funding by the criteria and you say, okay, I have this project and it will fit these criteria, or you're creating the projects for the certain criteria? Yeah, so this is my question.
I think it's very dangerous to try to create a project based on someone else's criteria. One, because it will be more work to try to think of genuine and authentic language and what do I want to do. For the work that I do as it relates to grant writing, we have an idea, we have a project, and that is, again, through a lot of conversations, a lot of time, and a lot of planning, the ideation is already there. And it's a matter of how do I communicate? So I don't change myself when I'm talking to you, Alex, right? Or talking to a different person. I am authentic to myself, and I will highlight certain characteristics about myself as it relates to what I think you might be interested in. And the same if you treat grant writing or soliciting funds as a relationship, you are you, and how you express yourself and what you express yourself is what changes, but certainly not in any kind of human relationship. You don't bending yourself to fit some other criteria is probably the hardest and most disingenuous thing, I think, as humans, you can do.
I think I would agree on that. Also, that like never the project itself would completely change. But here we're having a couple of structures that are. There's one fund that is regional. So if you want to apply there, and then you need to come up with other places than just the biggest city that is in that region, because they want to foster that there is more movement of arts also in smaller villages or on the countrysides, and I think these aspects then they trigger to okay, yeah, apart from where we thought to realize it, what could be done in another space that maybe is on the countryside in another town. So I think that is kind of impulses that from different structures then make you go and move and check how would your project also maybe fit in another environment. But I know that with the association, because you have different possibilities when there is an association to apply for the structure, or also ID Frankfurt has a festival, and that festival has a possibility to get a funding also from a bigger regional fund, and they do every year or every 2 years they have a topic. So apart from the topic of the festival, like you said, Ashleigh, you need to highlight those aspects of that work or of this idea that suits to that motto, but it doesn't change the festival in itself. Like that is the same each time the association is realizing it, for example.
As an example, I just wanted to bring like a project we did last year. It was a conference. It was called Collecting Bauhaus, and we tried to invite institutions from all over the world to come to Dessau to have 3-day discussion about it. And so when we applied for this, it was completely founded by, like only 20% by the Bauhaus and 80% by an external founder. And for them was very important that we offered translation, immediate translation in the whole program. And for us was like, okay, so we do it, because for them, this ability, being able to communicate it to everyone in 2 languages, because of course the main language was going to be English, but Dessau, I don't know, maybe no one knows. Dessau is a very small city, and they are always trying to bring Dessau together. Yeah, it's a shrinking city, so they are always trying to include the elderly, so they can come in the Bauhaus and they can, participate in the different activities. And this is also a language matter. So for us was like, okay, so of course we have to take this into account, that we need to pay for this, which is of course very expensive, but therefore we could have the whole grant. So let's say you always find middle points. And for us was like, of course, this is very easy. They didn't mingle in our really idea, like in the concept. For them was just important this part, like it should be able for everyone to participate. And this was just a language matter, which we just made it happen.
I think that you could always fit your idea in some kind of project guidelines, but the most important thing is to have an idea. After that, everything is much more easier because you already have some kind of direction. And I think all the projects are and programs are written and their demands are formed in a way which can be I don't know, reconstructed and in a way which you can reconstruct your idea and build it again. It's still your idea. It's just, you know, like taking the shape of these conditions. So I think that maybe once I've tried to make a project because of an open program, but it didn't go well because you should not dictate your ideas while looking at a project. You should adjust your project and your idea while looking at some programs. At least that's my opinion.
I have just one other quick add, sorry, but about the sort of middle ground adjusting that Valentina had referenced. I did apply for a grant to do a residency in a high school. It would have been a multi-day residency. Again, education is part of what we do. So master classes, lectures on Black composers, performances, edutainment performances, we call them, that are interactive with history and music, side by side with the student strings and our organization performing. And the foundation, the program officer called and said, actually, we don't do this and this and this. What you have in your project proposal, we don't fund. Any like human contact, side by side performances, we don't fund. But you can do a master class, you know, as long as you keep away from kids, which felt very disingenuous. And I tried tweaking it and, you know, fitting their guidelines. They came back, actually, this thing that you have in here still we don't fund. And I told them that I have to find a different funder because this is not mission aligned with us. This is moving far away from our core values. And they ended up changing their mind and funding us anyway. But in any case, having a backbone and recognizing that not every relationship is perfect. And it sometimes isn't you that needs to change. It's the funder that needs to change. And just sort of sticking to your moral grounds and your mission for the work that you're doing.
Maybe, yes, there is this side of criteria, which is like what you, Valentina, said about the translating, but there is also this side of criteria which Ashleigh shared, which are like more artistical. And then really often in the past years, I met really like criteria put which changed the artistical part of everything and like forced topics inside, which I'm asking myself, who is putting these criteria and why are they put it? Are they putting them because it's just now the right thing to do to talk about them? Or is it really the goal to find the artistical way? Because it's sometimes it's really difficult. I can tell you one example, like 3 years ago, I remember Bulgaria was the presidency, had the presidency of the European Union. And then I had to connect the festival with this presidency, which is like, yeah, I said it has all these nationalities and the festival has also all these nationalities, but then it makes you swift the basic concept into something which maybe artistically you don't want it to go, but in order to get the funding, you are forced to do this. So actually my questions was more based on this, like, did you had to change your concept view because of criteria in order to get funding?
For me, no. And maybe I have a unique situation where I am that if it's not, it isn't as if there's a small cohort of funders and therefore by necessity, I have to accommodate that small cohort. There's other avenues to explore. So if that relationship isn't going to work, then I'm not going to give it any more thought, because there's other relationships that I can develop and negotiate with. So if it doesn't feel if it doesn't feel right, and if it feels disingenuous, or feels like it's too much work to have to reimagine, then I don't bother with it. And maybe that's an exceptional case that I have here, because there are other sources that I can look through. But I don't do that.
I think I have never had a situation where I had to completely bend the content or the idea. I had the situation, and I think it was the biggest project I've realized as a freelancer, and it was in the support of one theater. And then, in order that they could fit it in their specific program, which they had in mind, we had to amplify the production to 2 more state theaters. And it got huge, and we did exactly the same. It was a 2-part project. It had an installation, and then, like time later, a developed performance with it, and it needed to be doubled and stretched out and adapted to various amounts of spaces. Where in the beginning, I think I let myself convince that this is it's also a possibility, it's a chance, and all that, and you have more performances or more exhibition time. And then in the after effect, it was very clear that just those places which were initially from our team thought for the production, and that was where there was energy, there was interest, and the rest was to fulfill a structure that did exist. That was through different fundings. I didn't have to take care, but I was the one that was green, that we're adapting ourselves, multiplying ourselves in order to fit into this structure. And I have to say, it was a good lesson to learn, and I would never do that again. So in that sense, I think there is, Ashleigh, you're quite right. Even if it's like as an independent project and there's not a bigger structure behind it or no association, it's not often the best leverage you have when you say no. But like for me now, having done that many years, I think, with the experience, you know what you pay for if you don't say no. So, and I think also one other thought I had now in this pandemic time, I think for the first time I found myself in the situation that that there is so specific applications available for artists, which I found very twisted. Like if you produce a video and then you send it in and then you get a little grant. And so it's already kind of a fixed format. I felt that for the first time was something where if you want that, you really need to bend. You don't go from the impulse anymore, from where's your interest, in which creative field you want to dive in with your idea. You go from the outside and okay, this is the format, if I want to get that money, then now. And because of this urgency, I felt it had a weird place, but normally, luckily, not so much.
Well, I would say, something pretty much the same as you guys. Of course, I think you can find middle points where you can, present it better. Because for me, like in my experience, I think I have also realized in a way how do you communicate again all of this. But of course, if funding wants to change the core of your idea, then makes no sense. So what do you want this funding? I mean, so I think it's just a matter of to say, okay, in which way is this changes affecting my core idea? Am I able to, I mean, like, let's just say, am I able to communicate the same I want with this idea, with these changes or not? Not because, as Ashleigh said, you have to stay true to yourself. And I don't mind doing minor changes or like maybe transforming the narrative. But the core idea has to stay the same. Otherwise, I don't need the funding really, because if I don't want to fund my own concept, what do I want it?
I totally agree on that. As I said before, the most important thing is your idea. And but there are always sacrifices. When you don't have the budget to realize it, there will be always some kind of downfalls with which you should adjust yourself somehow, but you should be really careful not to over adjust your idea. Maybe that's the silver lining. You should be careful, because yes, sometimes you have something on your mind and you see a program that works for you. When you start reading more on this topic, you see that you should make some kind of changes, corrections, explanations. But if you think that this is still preserving your core, I think that's fine. If there's something that bothers you and that changes the root of your ideas or idea, I think that's the time you should just say no. But as I told you, in Bulgaria, fundings are really, really complicated, and sometimes in order to realize your ideas, you have to make a little bit bigger sacrifices, because otherwise you're just unable to realize anything. And that point, you're thinking, okay, what do I prefer? Just staying like a vegetable and not doing anything, or try to reinvent my idea in some way? But this is really specific for Bulgaria. I'm not quite sure that situation is like the same in Germany or the USA.
Thank you very much. That were a lot of really interesting takes and perspectives. Maybe as a last question to go to open up the space of the utopia, like, would you have ideas or wishes to change the process of funding? Or do you have one thing where you would say, that would make it so much easier to actually work artistically and not work as an organizational production person? Or yes, do you have some thoughts or takes on that?
Well, with fundraising, it does become it's highly competitive, especially when you're working primarily with corporate sponsors or foundations or grants. So to change a model to be more community-based, individual donations, kind of a for us, by us, grassroots initiative, which to some extent requires more work since there are more people involved, more individual donors to get the equivalent of what a foundation could give. But it feels like it would have more, not just financial backers, but it would have more community involvement. So it would help exponentially your project, and realizing that you have an audience, you have a committed team, similar to like a Patreon account or something like this, where or in a for-profit setting where you have investors who are literally buying into your concept and are loyal in that kind of sense. So diversifying the funding source, or it's more community-based?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we have been working so much in Frankfurt to change with the association, because this was the initial point to change the funding system from what it was 10 years ago, to create changes so that there is a possibility to have a bit bigger funding, and we raised the amount of money that is in this cultural ministry for arts and all. But I think this regular project-based work, it is in one way, like you said, probably very different than in the States, because we don't have so much the dependency on corporations, or for us this is at the Ministry of Culture, but that is competitive. There is all this, okay, which theater, which room are you having behind you, and then you're a better representative when you have the application than others. But I also wonder, also now with this time like coming up, why not trusting in artists, that they are artists because they want to be. So there is something, you will have the wish and the urge to bring something out, to make it an outer expression, and this outer expression needs to be shared, because if not, it wouldn't be that way of art that we're at the moment at least doing. So, but the amount of time maybe that it has could be different. So I don't know if, I think I would be interested to see what if, like on the city where you live, where you say, this is my base, I engage here with the people, maybe, or sometimes I work outside, but there is this commitment to have an artist funding, like something that you get as a regular base, so that when you're not with a company or not in a fixedly funded project that lasts for 4, 6, or 8 weeks and then it's over, that then you need to go and work in a restaurant or a bar or teach, or which I think are all, we're multiple in all those things, in teaching, in education, in bring our work there, but also to have the justification to go into research and allowing the next ideas to really form. I think that would create some space and also new ways of engaging with the place you're in, with the people you're in. Yeah. So that would be my wishing for a tryout.
Yeah, I also think like what Kristina is saying is very valuable, and I think like that's the big concern that I see also with the artists I sometimes work with. This lack of security, like this lack of sustainability during the process, like it's not a very safe process. It's not the same when you're producing something, a concept, or you're working on a project where you already have food on your table and you can just pay your bills and, be okay with that. But when you already have to think about that, of course, this another basic income as an artist would ensure in a way that you can produce in a more democratical way. Of course, on the other side, like for example, that where does money coming from and how do you, let's say, can inform about how this money is being spent, because this is also something when you work with public money is a huge topic. I think in Germany is a huge topic, but everywhere. I also worked in Colombia with public monies, and this is about, okay, great, you take public monies, and of course the funding is complicated, but let's say we are in the perfect wonderland, in Wonderland, and we all get 3,000 euros a month, but then we need to prove how we expend that, and I think this is the other thing that sometimes we are not all very, very aware of, that when working with public monies, we are working with the money of everyone, and therefore we have to be able to fulfill certain, requirements to say, how am I spending this money? What is available, or what should be also allowed in my creative process? Everything is allowed, in this kind of topics, I think is a very delicate social topics that then you have to enter into the discussion even before talking about this utopian world, perfect world where we all get like a basic income. I'm totally agree that this should be something that we have to work towards, and to say, okay, analyze how do we facilitate it to people, but of course, as everything, we have to play with certain rules, but the question would be, which are those rules?
In general, I think that the perfect utopia for me will be for the audience to be, at least from what I am experiencing in the moment, for the audience to be much more engaged in the whole creative process, in terms of donations and in terms of general involvement, not only like spectators. Also, I think that it will be great if the process of making donations from a corporation will be easier. That will be great, because a lot of big companies, for example, in Bulgaria, will be willing to give more for art, because at the moment I think they don't have enough, interest in giving money for projects. And in general, if there are more ways to fund your ideas, that will be great, because you will be more free in terms of not changing your core idea and not subordinating it to some kind of rules. But as we all said, that's an utopia, so probably I'm not quite sure that will be a possibility in the future, but I hope so. And actually in Bulgaria we made a huge step forward in terms of acknowledging the independent artists in general. I don't know how it is in other countries, but here in 2020 we made a huge progress thanks to this virus, actually. So maybe that's a silver lining.
Can I add just a quick, sorry, I'm adding all sorts of things here, but I definitely do agree about a base for artists. I'm not sure if in other countries something similar, but with the nonprofit sector, at least, there's multi-year foundational grant. And then also for artists, there's career grants. So it might be 50,000 for the year, not related to any kind of project specificity, no reporting required, and it's an investment in the artist. And in other cities, there are, for instance, we have a poet in residence who is the poet of the city for several years, and they get supported with speaking engagements, certainly financial support as well. And for other sectors, we have something like this here, but it's an investment in an artist, again, highly competitive, but it's an investment in a whole person, recognizing that, you know, when you're not on stage, you don't certainly become obsolete. You still are a human, and all of your humanity needs to be supported beyond a single project.
Well, it's very inspiring utopias we heard. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your inspiring talk. I learned a lot of things, also about myself, listening to all your stories. I think it's important once in a while to compare all our experiences in order to find the perfect utopia, or like a way to create an utopia in the end. Thank you very much for your time. was extremely big pleasure for me to have you all the same time zone somehow in Zoom. We're going to see each other next week with our third last discussion for this year's edition of the festival, where we're going to look at the role of the festivals in the independent sector. And yeah, and we're going to finish again with music. And I guess our utopia with Florence about the last question.
Tell me what you think about me. I buy my own diamonds and I buy my own rings. Only ring your celly when I'm feeling lonely. When it's all over, please get up and leave. Tell me how you feel about this. Try to control me, boy, you get dismissed. Pay my own condo and I pay my own bills. Always 50-50 in relationships. The shoes on my feet, I buy. The clothes I'm wearing, I buy. The rock I'm rocking, I buy. 'Cause I depend on me. If I want it, the watch I'm wearing, I buy. The house I live in, I buy. The car I'm driving, I buy. I depend on me. I depend on me. All the women who independent, throw your hands up at me. All the honeys making money, throw your hands up at me. All the mamas rockin' dollar, throw your hands up at me. All the ladies who truly feel me, throw your hands up at me. Girl, I didn't know you could get down like that. Charlie, how your angels get down like that. Girl, I didn't know you could get down like that. Charlie, how your angels get down like that. Tell me how you feel about this. Do it how I want, live how I wanna live. I worked hard and sacrificed to get what I get. Ladies, it ain't easy being independent. How'd you like this knowledge that I brought? Bragging on that cash that he gave you is the front. If you're gonna brag, make sure it's your money you fund. Depend on no one else to give you what you want.